After an extremely violent Labor Day weekend in Chicago, we had 51 shootings, 9 murders. Trump says he will deploy National Guard to Chicago, but doesn't say when. After a weekend like that, what do you expect? Well, let's go Brandon Johnson. He's still gonna say, oh, this is fascism. Let's get into it. Here we go.
We're told because of the weekend violence, a non-for-profit group is with specially trained anti-violence volunteers patrolling several Chicago neighborhoods. ABC7 data shows...
Well, that's going to do it. That's going to do it. A bunch of social whatever. Oh, yeah, let's go out and kumbaya through the streets. That'll show the gang shooters that are just blowing each other up. That'll show them what's what. No. Ridiculous. Ridiculous.
At least 54 people were shot and 7
54
over the Labor Day holiday weekend. Now, the violence comes as President Trump threatens to deploy the National Guard to Chicago to crack down on crime. Now, the weekend violence includes 3 mass shootings, 2 of them in Bronzeville.
Okay.
We're told 1 person is in custody for that shooting at 36 in Cottage Grove. There will also be extra police patrols in the neighborhood. This all comes as President, or should I say Mayor Brandon Johnson, signed an executive order in response to the Trump administration.
God, she'd have a Freudian slip there. President Brandon Johnson. I'd have to go with President Let's Go Brandon Johnson. If that happens, I am moving to Mercury. I'm moving to another planet. If Let's Go Brandon Johnson gets elected as president of the United States, no. I'm taking the space shuttle to space because that's how bad it would be. Let's go, Mr. President, Mr. Let's Go Brandon. What do you think?
Possibly sending the National Guard to the streets of Chicago. Neighbors in Bronzeville shared mixed reaction to federal deployments to help address violence.
Us as people, we can come together and fix it out on our own. We don't need no one.
Yeah, how's that working out for you there, hot stuff? How is that working out for you? How many shootings did you have? 51 and somewhere between 7 and 9 murders. And you're saying you can work it out on your own? I'd say no. You are 100% incorrect. You might as well give the feds a shot. Let's just see what happens, right? Let's just see what happens. I know DC went through, at least a 10, 12-day period where they had no murders? Let's see. You got the National Guard loaded up on the streets, which isn't a long-term solution, but it's certainly a short-term solution. Let's see what happens Trump sends into the feds. That'll be interesting. Just loads up Chicago, loads up all the neighborhoods that have, historically have all of the violence happen. Just load them up with feds and let's give it a whirl. Let's see what happens based on the data and the science.
Come here and, wreck shack our community and tell us when and how. No, we are all old enough. We can come together. We just got to put the guns down.
That's already good idea. Yeah, but you're not doing that, and you've never done that, so that's never going to happen. So let's be realistic. None of this community coming together nonsense is going to work. That's just not going to work at this point. You're too far gone, way too far gone. And it's not gun violence, it's human-on-human violence. Because guns don't just pop up and load themselves and shoot another human being, do they? You got to have somebody pull that trigger. So let's call a spade a spade. This is gang violence, and it's happening from one individual to another, period.
Yeah, I think it would be better for the city. It keep our community safe. It's pretty bad. I think the National Guard being here is very, very good. To slow down. Like for me, I got kids. I want to see the community better.
Okay.
Current and retired guardsmen tell us the National Guard is trained for military combat, not policing crime. If troops were deployed in Chicago, military experts say they would be likely used to guard federal buildings. Now, as for the violence over the long weekend, say investigations into all of the shootings are ongoing.
Oh, drives me crazy. So you've got investigations going on. I feel so much better, right? Let's see what Trump has to say. Let's just catch this for a second.
To be protected. I would love to have Governor Pritzker call me. I'd gain respect for him and say, we do have a problem and we'd love you to send in the troops because you know what? The people, they have to be protected. I saw today on one of your networks, not a friendly network, except really the opposite, I would say, very unfriendly network. And they interviewed about 12 people on this morning. Most of them were African American, who were black. And they were saying, please, please, please let the president send in. These were people from Chicago. Please, we need help. We need help. We can't walk outside. We're petrified. If the governor of Illinois would call me up, I would love to do it. Now, we're going to do it anyway. We have the right to do it because I have
Over the top.
to protect this country.
So let's get to the meat and potatoes. Trump basically goes in, well, we're going in. We're going in. Trump said in the Oval Office when asked if he's made a decision on the matter after days of threats and warnings. He's been in D.C., they've been in L.A. doing the ICE thing, and now it's on to, and they've also said Seattle, Portland, Chicago, New York City, L.A., I mean, all the hot spots. Let's touch on all the hot spots. But the president gave no timeline or specifics, quickly adding, I didn't say when we're going in. So he's holding that back as a little caveat, right? Yeah, but I'm not really sure exactly when we're going in. Chicago mayor has grave concerns as Trump threatens to send in the National Guard. Oh, what will Brandon Johnson do? Brandon Johnson, probably the least effective mayor in the United States from a standpoint of babbling about nonsense that doesn't make any sense and doubling down on it every time he needs to babble. His most recent thing that I just think is fantastic is he's going to fill a 1.1, 1.2, maybe even just a $1 billion budget gap. He's going to fill that with progressive funding. What even is that? Oh, that's just where you tax those that are basically making your city run because they own businesses. You're going to go after the wealthy. You're going to go after the big businesses, and then they will leave because they have options. They have money. They will take their big businesses and go elsewhere, like you're seeing in Seattle. And how will that work out for you? Well, anyway, we're going to use progressive revenue. That's what we're doing. Progressive revenue. And you're left with, what? I've never even heard that. Well, it's because you're not progressive. You're not progressive enough to really be on board here with what we're doing. This is progress. Taking money out of the rich, taking money out of the businesses that create all the jobs, that create all the tax revenue, and then we're giving it to all the constituents, including $300 million to the criminal illegals. Oh, yeah, okay. Anywho, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson said the city is taking President Donald Trump's comments after sending in the National Guard to combat violence seriously, calling the move uncoordinated, uncalled for, and unsound. You know, the relatives of the 51 that were just shot in Chicago and the 7 to 9 individuals that were murdered that are now dead might also say that the violence that their loved ones experienced was uncoordinated, uncalled for, and unsound. They might say that as well. I'm just saying, right? We take President Trump's statements seriously, but to be clear, the city has not received any formal communication from the Trump administration regarding additional. These people all want, all of this transparency and all this discussion. Hey, why don't we just put up a billboard and tell the criminals, we're coming to a street near you. Check out this one. So don't commit any of your murders, your shootings in these neighborhoods because we're coming there. Why don't we just do that? I mean, that'd be, effective, right? No. Certainly, we have grave concerns about the impact of any unlawful deployment of National Guard troops. Okay, Trump said earlier Friday he plans to send the National Guard to Chicago next as part of his attempts to curb violence. He also specifically called out Johnson, let's go Brandon Johnson, as an incompetent mayor. Yeah, he is wildly incompetent. Let's go Brandon Johnson is Probably the most incompetent mayor out there, I think, on a broad scale of just not really knowing what he's doing, looking around, going, woof, woof, yeah, I made a mistake there. Good Lord, that $300 million tax fiasco, I threw it out there, and every single alderman said, no can do. We're not doing that. Let's go, Brandon. Let's go, LBJ. Chicago is a mess. You have an incompetent mayor, grossly incompetent, and we'll straighten that one out probably next. That'll be our next one after this, and it won't even be tough. People in Chicago are screaming for us to come, so I think Chicago will be our next, and then we'll help with New York. Now, these are not long-term solutions. You've literally got generation after generation of folks who think it's okay to whip out a gun and shoot each other, otherwise known as gang violence. They're okay with that. You look at the statistics, you understand, okay, this is what they're doing. Then you've got a bunch of citizens that go, we're shooting each other. Yes, you are. And then you've got police that, they're caught in the middle here. Their job is to keep the resident safe. But when you have that many shootings, good luck with that. Ain't a happening, right? Trump did not give an indication on timing other than saying it'll begin when we're ready. So it's not going to solve anything long-term by any means, but it sure gives some political clout because you know what's going to happen? Well, if you've got the feds on your street, you are not going to be pulling any shenanigans. You're just not. But how long can the feds keep that up? Chicago's a big town, right? So you're going to go to a handful of these areas? And then are you just going to have an absolute beatdown when a shooting happens? Only local law enforcement can basically arrest those criminals, right? Because we're not, the National Guard is, they're set up to do wildly different stuff, not hunt down criminals. That's not their job. That's not their task. But they are a body on the street. And having bodies on the street, I think, will slow down some of that activity. But it's certainly not a solution. But from a political standpoint, Trump will just pick up points after points after points because he's actually doing something about it. Whereas Let's Go Brandon Johnson, he's just putting his head further up his ass. And you can hear it just right up there. Trump did not give any, unlawfully deploying the National Guard in Chicago has the potential to inflame tensions between residents and law enforcement. What about those who've had their loved ones killed by gang warfare? What about that? Are we gonna throw them out there at all as far as where they sit within the plot line? It doesn't seem like it though. When we know that trust between police and residents and foundations to building safer communities, whatever, an unlawful deployment would be unsustainable and would threaten to undermine the historic progress we have made. Okay, so let's go, Brandon Johnson. The historic progress of this past weekend where you had how many shot? How many was that? Let's go, Brandon. How many? How many people got murdered? How many people got murked in your city? How many was that? I'm asking for a friend. How many was that? Yeah. Anyway, let's move on, right? The mayor said the city has seen a 30% reduction in homicides in the past year and a 35% reduction in robberies. And shootings have gone down by nearly 40%. This is what I'm talking about, folks. It's like you get these stats and then you're left with, yeah, but just had that shooting. So am I to believe what the media sets out or do I believe the actual stories in their context? You got to go with the stories, right? You got to go with the stories because the stories are just like, what are we even doing? Let's take a look at this. Check this out. Here's just Chicago violent crime rate. I just put that in to see what's going on. Chicago crime stats at a glance. Is Trump right about the Windy City? It doesn't even really address any issues. Like sending in the feds? I'm not opposed. Don't get me wrong. I am not opposed. But is it really going to solve anything? Temporarily, it might. And that's all that Trump needs to do. And then he can point to that. And on other instances, in D.C. went down here, Chicago went down here. And that is what all the Democrats, that's what all the progressive, that's what all the libtards are worried about, oh my gosh, he might actually be beating us at this deal. Headline number 2, full list of major cities with higher murder rates than Chicago. This is just a quick Google search. And you know what? You're going to have major cities with higher murder rates, and some of them are going to be in Republican states. And you know what? Memphis, Tennessee being one. Who is in leadership in those big, ultra-violent cities? Give you a hint. It's not a Republican. It's not a conservative. That's bottom line. In Chicago, violent crime is down. Headline number 3. Crime in Chicago, what you need to know. Chicago homicides in 2025, 278 people slain. Here's how that compares with previous years. These Chicago residents welcome extra help fighting crime, but don't want Trump to send the National Guard. All of this is basically, except for Fox, Chicago residents beg for more help as crime wreaks havoc. All of these headlines are so one-sided, so one-sided. As Trump plans to deploy the military, how bad is Chicago crime? At least that one is how bad instead of, is it bad? Let's see the numbers. Trump Chicago murder capital claim trashed by red state stats. That's where you've got cities in red states run by Democrats that are equally terrible, that you've got people just getting capped all day long. Yeah, they are not Republican cities. They're not Republican-held cities. This past weekend, I was in Lake Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and they do not have a high crime rate. It is very, very well controlled. It's contained. It's a small Idaho town. I forget how many residents they had. Not a ton. Few thousand. Massive lake. And it's clean, and there's no graffiti, and there's no shenanigans. There's no homeless services because you don't have any homeless, because they have taken a stand and said, no, they don't have drugs there per se. I'm sure they come in and out, right? You know, big resorts there on the lake. Of course you're going to have some. But yeah, even weed is illegal there. It's a class 1 narcotic, right? Even weed is illegal. So you hop across the border into Spokane, and anything goes. From Tweakerville delight, Spokane, Washington. You know, literally only 15, 20 minutes separate Spokane and Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. It's a wild, wild deal. You know, you go through Spokane and it's kind of old and it's kind of grungy. There are some really nice areas. There's country club areas in Spokane, but you got to kind of get off the freeway to get to those areas. Whereas in Idaho, you know, you drop into Idaho and it's like high desert and it's clean. You don't have, and you've got normal people running around. You don't have any of the big fatties with blue hair with, you know, nose rings so they can get pulled around like a cow or something. You don't have those people. You don't have people driving weird rigs with weird bumper stickers that say a bunch of just weird stuff that is just mental nonsense. You got a lot of trucks. You got a lot of people. You got a lot of money in Coeur d'Alene. And it was wild. It was wild. And I'm from Bellevue, you know what I mean? And it's like, well, pretty used to seeing exorbitant displays of wealth. But in particular, in that portion of Idaho, you got some people that apparently have money, or they want you to believe they do. You know, either one of those things. So absolutely crazy. Let's read this one. Chicago residents beg for more help as crime wreaks havoc. When I've been growing up, actually, it wasn't really as bad as it is today. When I was growing up back in the early 2000s, it was bad. But the kids nowadays, they're just wreaking havoc in all the neighborhoods. Illinois officials presided over a deadly Labor Day weekend as 32 separate shootings occurred in Chicago. That's since been updated since the time of this writing. Leaving at least 7 people killed, 37 others injured. King, a Chicago native living on the South Side, said crime in the city has worsened. We didn't play with guns. We didn't listen to drill rap music. Drill rap music. That rings a bell, right? Drill, but I don't know what it is. Why is that? Probably because I don't listen to it and I don't care, but I probably should. Like at this very young age. Like these kids are carrying guns like around the age of 8 years old and they're killing other 8-year-old kids with guns. It's insane to me. Me too. Absolutely. And from just a humanity standpoint, you don't want to see other humans just capping other humans. It's not the way we're supposed to be. It's the way we're gonna be, and it's gonna happen. And it's gonna happen in areas that have extreme gun control, but no control over the criminals within their society that they just let run around. You just let them run around, you're gonna have some issues. You're gonna have some huge issues. And that's how you get 51 shootings, 9 murders, whatever it is. We need, I'd say, about 10,000 police. Me personally, we do need mental health. Now, here's the thing. If you want to have mental health and have a mental hospital, get these illegals out of here, said Dennis White, a former National Guard officer. Yeah, I mean, absolutely true. Chicago spent, what, $300 million on the criminal illegals? $300 million. And then we got a big budget deficit. We're just going to use that progressive revenue. I mean, get these illegals out of here. One of the other storylines I'm following is the impact of the criminal illegals. 20 million of them, whatever it is, that have come into the country, that came into the country under Joe Biden, probably arguably the worst president ever. Certainly the most ineffective doing anything, specifically walking upstairs and stopping a bicycle and, talking to imaginary people. He's good at that, though. Good at that. But the real issue is you put 20 million people into the country that are all fighting for the same housing supply, which is entry-level housing. What do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? Do you think prices will go down? Do you think rent becomes cheaper? Nah, it all gets soaked up. So, yeah, get these illegals out of here. The shelter that you put these illegals in, use that as a mental hospital so that they can get the help they need so they can be more of a productive citizen, White added. That goes without saying, I think, to any town. But in the big blue ones right now, you've got an epidemic of homelessness, of mental issues, and drugs. And you put that all together, and then you let people live wherever in urban camping settings that they want. Oh, yeah, you can live there. It's fine. All the drugs you need, you betcha. We'll make sure you get them. Guys, bring it up over the southern border. And that's what we did. 4 straight years, right? Come to find out, we didn't need any legislation. Just needed that pesky new president thing, right? New president thing. Now southern border crossings are down 95%, something just insane like that. So, Johnson avoided answering repeated questions from Morning Joe host Joe Scarborough about whether an increased police presence in the city would help cut down on crime. Do you believe that the streets of Chicago would be safer if there were more uniformed police officers on the streets of Chicago? Scarborough asked Johnson. Scarborough pressed the liberal mayor multiple times, and Johnson emphasized the need for expanded social programs, including affordable housing. Worst mayor in America. I submit to you. We need more social programs, including affordable housing, to combat crime. What are you talking about? I believe the city of Chicago and cities across America would be safer if we actually had, affordable housing. What are you talking about? Look, I'm not saying Johnson began before Scarborough cut him off, noting it wasn't the question he had asked. Yeah, that's not the question I asked. What is wrong with you? Oh, I see. Your head's up your ass. That's what the problem is. I think the biggest piece of the pie that has to be more police officers, more protection. That's what the people want. More visibility, said Sposato, a self-described independent. I don't know why he wouldn't answer it, Sposato added of Johnson. I mean, he just refused to say we could use more police. He is a big believer of social justice. And that, my friends, that is how you get a Labor Day weekend with 9 murders, 51 people shot, a mayor that is completely out of touch with actual reality, and a constituency that is like, well, we believe the mayor, we believe the president. What do we do here? Because this isn't working. And then we saw the small faction that was like, if we just band together and we do a kumbaya moment, we can all fix this ourselves. Meanwhile, there's gunfire going off in the background. And you're like, oh, I don't think so. Let's get the F out of here. Your social programs are screwed. None of that stuff works. You need some more cops up in here. Now, what you need is you need a major, major change in the way that gun violence is looked at, meaning this isn't the way to solve things, because if I pull out my gun and shoot this individual, I'm going to jail for the rest of my life. You need more of that, but you don't have it, and you specifically don't have it in cities like Chicago that Trump is threatening to send in. And I don't think it's an idle threat. I think it happens. I think it happens pretty soon. And I think it happens in a way that it happens like it does in D.C. Yes, they're going to be covering the major federal buildings, but they're going to cover federal buildings in neighborhoods where they know they're going to have the most impact. They're not stupid. These are optics happening for a reason. I think it's fantastic because at the end of the day, you support criminals more than law and order, meaning ICE, meaning police, meaning National Guard going into wherever they're going. Oh, so you support the criminals. You support the criminals shooting each other more than ICE, National Guard, police. Is that your stand? No, we just need some more social workers. If we just had some more affordable housing. And you're just left with, what? You're saying, but the people of Chicago have heard this so many times. If we could just get our act together. Well, how's that working out? How is that working out? What was Labor Day 2025 like? What did that look like? Hey, numbers have been down in Chicago. When I first started covering this nonsense, when I went to, see if I've got it up here. Where is that? Yeah, Hey Jackass. Right now, Hey Jackass, this used to be 2 minutes, and this used to be, I think, 11 minutes. Those numbers are way down. Good job, Chicago. I mean, you're killing fewer of your people, But then you go over here to the Labor Day weekend, and in a solid weekend was 2016 weekend, 53 wounded, 13 killed. And this past one per Hey Jackass Chicago, you got 9 killed, 51 wounded. So, I mean, just in 2021, one of the most violent years, you got 9 killed, 57 wounded on Labor Day weekend. So the shootings are happening at a lesser rate, but on a big holiday weekend, still doing work, still doing absolute work. So what's going to happen? Well, we're going to find out. Make sure you're subscribed. Hit that notification bell. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this. Thanks so much for being here. I'll catch up with you in the next episode. Bye for now.